Yeah, absolutely. So, what's up, everybody? Kurt, I'm currently a manager at Apollo GraphQL, a DevRel manager. So, still a developer advocate at heart, and I focus a lot of my time around helping our team help the GraphQL community. That's what we do. And as far as the streaming stuff goes and how I got into that, I've always been a fan of teaching. I've always loved doing like workshops and stuff like that. And one thing that I've always found difficult, especially coming as someone from a non-traditional background, is that a lot of content that you find for educational purposes is polished and cleaned up, which is in one fashion good because it's a
Yeah.
direct delivery of the information. But where it affected me is that I would often run into issues that would be presented in a video as something trivial or non-starter or a simple step to even get started into the real thing. And when I would run into errors, I would imposter syndrome would set in, like, if it's so easy, like, why isn't my npm install working, or this, why am I getting this error, and I'd be unable to figure it out. And so I really like streaming because when I started watching coding streamers, one thing I noticed is that it's not that happy path. It's not this polished thing. They're developing it in front of you live, and you get to see their mistakes as well as their successes. So to me, it humanized education. It's a way to show people that not everything, even people who are experts in the area, I make mistakes all the time on Apollo streams when I'm building things with the software for the company that I work for, right? And so, that is a natural part of development. And I love how live streaming enables me to share, still quality content with the community, but do it in a way that is not just a happy path. And I think there is room for all those types of content. Polished video and courses and stuff
Yeah.
are great as well. We have a whole learning platform. So, we're definitely there, but I like other avenues as well. People learn differently, and we want to present as many different ways as we can. So that's like the biggest piece. And then the other part is community. I
Yeah.
love getting on stream and hanging out with folks and talking GraphQL or building things, and folks in the chat jumping in and mob programming with me. And, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the one thing that drew me toward as well, because I had a problem. Well, I have many problems, but the problem I had was I wanted to be consistent on contributing to open source projects and building my own projects. And the way I could stay consistent, but also have some sort of like accountability, I guess per se, is by scheduling
Yeah.
myself on my calendar. This is when I'm going to live on Twitch, and that became a thing I did for all of last year and even this year, halfway through this year. And I've enjoyed it because not only can I learn something new, like when I watch other folks' streams, which your streams were some of the earlier streams, I learned how to do all these sort of like live changing and editing and understanding how browser sources work. Because it's going
Nice.
to your point, it's something that you feel dumb for not knowing, because eventually when you figure it out, it's like, oh, I guess I could have got here eventually. But
Yeah.
not knowing that, like right now, I have embedded my laptop looking at Clarkio. So shout out to Clarkio, who's live right now. Everybody should definitely jump on his stream and see him do some really cool stuff after this. What I'm getting at is, like, I now have this embedded. I've got a browser source, which is now my overlay. I've got a little SVG right here with our names down here, and now I've got our Zoom call all embedded. And it took me a while to figure out how that all worked, because sometimes I'll miss, the beginning of a stream, or miss a video or a blog post, or it's just not
Yeah.
discoverable. But once you start like sitting around hanging out in chat, you learn so many more things. You learn, like, I didn't know, like, the ZSH or the Z shell, like you could configure it this way, or I could use fish shell, or like those like nuanced things that you just don't get because YouTube videos or egghead videos are really concise and to the point.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to have like the same you have your coworkers when you sit in the office. You want to sit next to somebody and be like,
Exactly.
"Hey, what command did you just do? Could you just do that one more time?" And you can do that on
Mhm.
Twitch.
Yeah, and it's like pair programming, right? In a lot of ways, it opens up the door for conversation around what is happening in real time, and it's like contextual, and you can't get that with pre-created content. And while that stuff is also awesome, like we've said before, yeah, it's just one of the things that drew me to this. I answer so many questions. Like, I feel like half the streams really just end up being like just like talking to folks and
Yeah.
answering questions from chat. And it's really rewarding, one, for me to help developers on such a personal level, one-to-one level. And then on the flip side, it must be nice to have a place to go where you know that you can ask questions and people will do their best to like help you out and answer it, and you can just show up and hang out with them.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. So I want to talk about what I brought you on to talk about, which is how you set up your stream. How do you sort of have your overlays, your chat? Because you have a couple blog posts, which might as well bring this up too as well, because I actually go back. I should tell you this. I go back and reference some of your earlier blog posts on this site
Nice.
about streaming and setting up your your automated announcements and tweets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like all the extraneous things. It's great content, and also shout out to Jason too as well. Same deal.
Same.
Yeah, I go and watch his streams. He does a couple streams every now and then. I'm not sure if it's like a canceled guest or whatnot, because he normally has guests. But he did a stream where he actually went through and talked through about all his setup.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which was like so insightful, because I was able to like finally figure out, oh, that's how he did that one thing.
Yeah,
it becomes
he has some really cool stuff on his stream going on.
Yeah, and it's funny. Michael Jolly, who's the bald bearded builder, he mentioned to me that when I used to ask him a lot of questions earlier in my streaming career, and he mentioned about the chatbots, and chatbots are kind of like with Jedis, it's like your lightsaber. So like when you first live stream, the first thing you build should be your chatbot. Whether you go fork and clone someone else's and you build on top of that, or you start from scratch, like chatbots become the thing that every streamer ends up doing that.
Everything. It's so handy. So handy.
Yeah, so shout out to Living in Van who's mentioning the kitchen tour, which is going to be a bit of this. I want to be able to understand the worst dev and the setup. So like, where would you start in explaining how your streaming setup goes?
Yeah, I think what I'll do real quick, we can go, we'll go into the repository, but I think it's best to just kind of talk about the architecture and how that enables a lot of the setup. So Brian mentioned using something called browser sources. So a lot of folks that stream, we do this through one of two apps, either OBS or Streamlabs OBS, which is OBS with some nicer features added onto it that a company called Streamlabs has, because OBS is open source, actually. Here we are, Open Source Friday, it's open source. So they have made their own version, which has some added plugins and other features on top of it, right? So one of the sources that you can embed to decide what will be streamed or recorded is called a browser source. And what this gives you is a frameless, windowless browser that you can load up any URL into. It's a WebKit-based browser. And once you load up a URL, at that point, you're able to, do pretty much anything that you can do within a web page. This opens up a lot of opportunity to really extend what you can do. A lot of the other input sources when it comes to like visual things and interactions honestly aren't the greatest in OBS. It's like a really, really bad version of like Photoshop or Figma, right?
It reminds me of GIMP. If everybody used GIMP back in the day, I know GIMP's still around, but like now I work at a company that they give me a Photoshop license, so I forgot about GIMP. But
tabled it.
But I feel like GIMP was a tool that was a open source version of Photoshop. And if you didn't have you couldn't get a free license, and whatever ways you would do it back in the day, then you would use GIMP, and it did most of what you needed, but you had to like figure out all the other cool features that Photoshop gave you for free. Or sorry, that was not for free; it was for $500. But what I'm getting at is, GIMP was the equivalent to like what OBS is to, I don't know what the professional. I've heard the names, but I don't think of them.
Yeah, they don't really come to mind. There's a couple of them, but really what OBS is a broadcasting software.
Yeah.
So like a paid version, what you might be looking for actually would be like TV broadcasting software, or a lot of churches will use like broadcasting software and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's really what it is. It's a free open source version of broadcasting software that comes with a large ecosystem of community built plugins. Again, here we are talking about like open source and community.
Yeah.
And so we use use this browser source to, especially for developers, shortcut our way into building a lot of the things that would otherwise be extremely difficult in OBS and otherwise probably too time consuming in a lot of ways to be worth it.
Yeah, I did want to mention real quick, in my Baybot repo, I do have a screenshot of where you would add a browser source.
Perfect.
This actually walks through doing the forking and cloning process. So if you did want to build your own, that's what that is. But I did want to just point out that that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. So now that we've covered that, right, we have these browser sources. And so what that means is we can do really two things. One is we can create web pages or browser sources that style our layout, right? So just like you were talking about having the SVGs for the bottom thirds for our names and the layout and all of that stuff, we can bring that in. We can build that with whatever front end thing we want, whether that's regular HTML and CSS. We do it that way, or we're using React. Like in this case, I'm using currently React, but we're moving to Next. I'm migrating all of this to Next.js. And we're using Apollo, we're using GraphQL, because the second thing that you can do is create interactions and engagements. Yeah. And when we talk about like chatbots and how Twitch works, it's real time. So I wanted to use infrastructure that supported real-time data transfer pretty straightforward and easily. So I picked GraphQL. Surprise, surprise, the Apollo developer advocate picked GraphQL to build their project. But with subscriptions, it does actually give me a very quick and easy way to set up real-time data. So what I have working now is a backing server, GraphQL server, that is listening to some Twitch webhooks and also using a tool called tmi.js to receive incoming events, both from like Twitch if somebody follows or subscribes or chats a message. And then I'm using subscriptions to pipe that into some of those browser sources, depending on what it is that you want to do. And when it comes to building your layouts, you really have a lot of options. Some people will build like the full layout and they'll have chat included in that and all that, and then like spaces for video and stuff like that. I've taken a more broken out or component, like piecemeal based approach, where chat is its own source. You can generate memes. We'll take a look at that. You can have like memes pop up on the stream, and that is its own source. The layouts are their own source. And you have some concerns to think about when deciding how many browser sources you want to use, like your computer, how much actual memory and CPU do you have available to you, and then how much interactive and real time, like are you going to do animations and stuff? Because as we know, JavaScript does not like to do animations while it's doing other things. So if we have one layout that's like our positioning, and maybe it has like an animated cool thing around it, and the chat is coming in animated, you're going to notice lagging like you would on a web page that was that was trying to do too much at one time. So those are the concerns that you want to think about. It takes some finessing to figure out what's going to work best for you. My personal opinion is start with one browser source and add more as you need them. Like if you're realizing some problems, don't break it up for no reason. Follow us along a lot of the lines for me for writing code.
Yeah. And someone dropped in the OBS kind of like eCam. Also Streamlabs is also, I guess the one thing to point out is like OBS is kind of the underlying software for a lot of these other projects, these paid projects. Yes. So you could learn OBS and a lot of that stuff will transfer over if you ended up wanting to use a paid product. And then I think the inverse also is true as well. So if you end up going with like an eCam or a Streamlabs or even Twitch Studio, you'll get the gist of it if you don't want to sort of plug and play and WYSIWYG everything on your browser, or sorry, your stream.
Yeah. I used Streamlabs at first, and so I think that's good. If it's real quick, I'd like to spend 1 second talking about that, because I think it can help a lot of folks. Is that Streamlabs OBS is actually free. You can still open and use that, but then what you can also do is sign up for a Streamlabs account, which they have a free account as well. And it will give you a lot of things like a pre-built chatbot. They even have like stream overlays and free templates that you can use, which are surprise browser sources that you can add into Streamlabs or even OBS. Like I know a lot of people who have a Streamlabs account, but still use OBS, not Streamlabs OBS, because it's going to provide you with a lot of the same URLs and browser sources that you would use. So it is cool that you can do both. But the neat thing about starting starting with Streamlabs is that you don't have to build all this stuff yourself. You can see like how they use browser sources and get something up and going. And then, you can start to replace those one at a time, right? Like, oh, I move my layout to my own hosted website. Now I update that browser source. I want to do my own chat or bot. I can migrate gradually. So don't feel like you have to take on learning OBS and all of that. Yeah, the OBS UI is meh. It is. It's not the best UI. And because of that, you could use something like this. It's about like finding the simplest solution that's going to fit your needs. We do a lot of really complex and complicated interactions, and we plan to expand that to more. And then also when it comes to sharing browser sources, make it very easy for us to share layouts across different computers and stuff. So.
Yeah. And there's a question from Living in a Van about is it possible to have worker threads to handle animations and browser sources in conjunction?
There is an entire documentation section on what you can do with the WebKit stuff inside of OBS. I don't remember seeing anything about web workers, but I also am not going to say no. I would say do a little bit more research. Oh, they do have, which something is fun that I discovered, and in their entire own event API, so you can respond to OBS events within your browser sources if you are writing custom JavaScript.
Yeah, interesting.
That's really neat.
There's so much you can do because I've messed with OBS webhooks, which is a plugin, so I can send webhooks to my Stream Deck to collapse a video and stuff like that. I don't do it for the GitHub stream, but I do it for my personal stream that I've since turned off because it is intensive. Which is something I do want to point out is like, if you could spin up a web server to power your OBS and these webhooks and API consumptions that trigger to your OBS, it's sky's the limit basically. So I know for a fact
it's the limit.
Who is it? I think it was one of the guys who used to be on the Go Time podcast. Eric St. Martin. He has a bot built in Go that uses Go routines. So which is a concurrency and having separate threads, threading and stuff like that. So like all is possible if you can write code. And I think that's what we're getting at as well with this conversation is the fact that you can go and fork and star and clone all of Kurt's stuff. Or you can build your own stuff, or you can attach your own stuff to Kurt's stuff and have plugins for Kurt's stuff if you want to go that far. And do that. And
you really can.
Yeah, I don't know if you have a plugin architecture, but I'm just throwing that out there if someone wants to impress the Apollo DevRel manager. That's one way to do it.
Yeah. I don't have like an official plugin architecture set up, but it's I would imagine it's straightforward to go through and see where you can add things like chat commands and stuff like that, and how it's architected. And actually, we'll go through that in a second if that's cool with you.
Yeah.
We won't dive too deep into it, but yeah, you can absolutely like fork this, start it. This has been inspiration for some other projects. So like MD Next. I don't know how many folks might be familiar with that project, but it's about using MDX in a bunch of different places. They have a stream overlays like boilerplate, like starter kit that can help you. I don't know what MD Next is under. I know it's Demetrius Clark who's running the project, but I don't know if they have their own org yet.
I don't think it's him.
Yeah.
I think he has an org. And I know what you're talking about exactly. Oh, it is him. Okay. Well, MD Next is under him. Yeah, okay. Not sure where his stream stuff is. Which I should have. I know Demetrius has been a while since he's streamed.
Yeah.
But
he's been working on a really cool project. Yeah, he's great. But this stuff is it's used by a lot of people. A lot of other people have adopted this pattern and are using it in their streaming. So, it's definitely, when we talk about open source, like, please go use this and extend it and share with me the things that you do. Cause like I have ideas, like I want to respond to channel points and set up like fun commands and stuff for folks to be able to either change my lights or maybe make me sing a silly song or something, who knows, but like just really fun interactions. We're just scratching the surface. But speaking of scratching the surface, if you want, we could take a look at like what's under the hood and dive there.
For sure.
So I guess let's actually do a demo of like how this works, and then we'll actually go and look at the flow of that if that's cool. Yeah. So in here, actually I can type the command because I have it open as well. So let me just go type a command real quick. All right, there go. So if I send that over, boom. Okay, so it's popping up a little bit out of there, but you can see I'm on GitHub, right? So I type this meme command, and anytime someone types that meme command into the Apollo chat, it's what's going to happen is that chat command gets sent to a GraphQL server. It's going to parse that command and see if it's something that it understands. If it does, it's going to take that information and boil it down into like the form to be returned to the client, and then the client is going to pick it up. It's a React app and respond to that subscription, and we'll go through it. So let's go through the path of like what happens now in the code, like when this chat message sends.
Yeah.
So if we want to jump back to GitHub, we can go to the server directory. And in here, it's pretty shallow. We should see chat.js. So let's open this up because the logic is going to live here. So here you can see I have kind of a command map of the different things that you can do. And the top one is that meme, that generates meme.
Yeah.
So if we scroll down a little bit further, you might even be able to search for generate meme, but it should be one of the first
Yeah, line 15.
hit it again. The second one, sorry, I guess it would be the next one where we actually do the implementation.
Oh, gotcha.
Perfect. So when we generate the meme, we are taking the text from the message, we're splitting it apart. We're using Cloudinary to, that's where we store the templates. And we scroll down a bit more, we build and keep going. We're gonna see somewhere, here we go, pubsub.publish, display meme, right? And so this pub/sub, this is the GraphQL part of it, the subscription. This is going to get sent down to the client. So if we go into the client folder now, we have a component that is set up to handle this. So back one more folder. There we go. And so these are two separate projects. The client gets deployed to Netlify and the server gets deployed to render.io. Actually, maybe render.com.
Yeah,
thank you.
They're .com now.
And yes, yep. So it hosts, so it's a always running GraphQL service. So if we go under source and components, and we should see, open up scene. Oh, that's interesting. Can you go back to source? Where is our, okay, go source, one more directory up. I'm sorry. I guess we'll look in the router. So if we go to app.js, I just can't remember where I put the memes. So memes, path memes.
Overlays.
Where's the component? There it is. Oh, overlays.
Yep.
Silly me. Thank you.
Yeah, it's I'm looking at the commit. It was 8 months ago, so fair enough.
Yeah, exactly. Here we go. And so what's happening here is we're using a hook that is connected to that subscription, and that's going to get the meme and then like play the sound. So that's how all of that is essentially going to work.
Nice. And then you're you said you're hosting all your images on Cloudinary, so you're using some sort of key value lookup or something, or you're generating the URLs to...
Yep, we're generating the URL. So that was happening back in that chat thing. It was just all codified out, but right below where we pulled out the information from the message, we're generating that URL, and then that happens right before we do that publish command to send the URL to the client. So the client really just gets the URL. So actually, if you want to go into the client hooks,
yeah, and I'm just pointing. I'm looking that you're using Framer, so you're able to leverage modern web development tools to be able to do that cool little animation you had.
Any React library that exists is available to you. All of these tools, open source projects that you want to use, become available to you in your stream scenes, and this is extremely powerful. And then we talk about we can also lay them out, right? So this is here, the thing that we're dancing around there, that other page with the purple background and the stream title. So all of this is another view, right? But this one is a little less interactive, but it's pulling actually the title from Google Calendar. Yep. And those upcoming streams that are ticking come from Google Calendar. And so I pull this in as a browser source. I never have to update the title. It automatically updates for me because of that. It'll tell you what streams are coming up. And I'm able to do this because it's browser based, right? So I
Yeah.
can make calls out to APIs. I have my backend GraphQL API, so I connect that to Google Calendar, to Twitch, to other services, and it just opens up a lot of doors. For my
Yeah.
personal site
Real
and
quick,
stream,
can
I'm
I
taking yeah
can
yeah
I just show this on the Apollo channel just to kind of land this? Is it
yeah.
Apollo GraphQL? Perhaps there's like a recent VOD.
Oh,
Yeah,
there
because
are
I just
recent
wanted
VODs
to
where you can see all this in action.
just for folks who aren't
So here you
as
go.
familiar with the streaming, you can see. Actually, I'm gonna just click the. We're gonna go into ad territory.
Yeah, my bad. Yeah. That's the one thing I dislike about Twitch, but I think it's okay. Like what you gain from
Yeah,
using the
so
platform.
like just case in point, the community, the chat interaction, all that stuff, and having that engagement of like what we could not do during the year, which was have meetups.
Yep.
It's definitely worth making sure that Bezos can go to the
Small
moon
price to pay.
eventually.
Yep.
But yeah, just gonna click through to when y'all show up. So this background, you're basically putting your, I don't know if whatever you use, Zoom or Skype, on the screen as its own source,
Yep.
video source. You've got
Yep.
your screen as a source, but the background is static. This is the
The
background.
background is static. Yep.
Yeah, and like
Completely static, but the title is kind of dynamic, right? Because I'm getting
Yeah.
it from GraphQL API, but static in the sense that I don't manually go into OBS and update any of that. I open up OBS, I make sure that I'm pointed at the right scene layout for the right show, and that's as simple as, so right there it says orbit. If you go back to the example in the Netlify one, so it says orbit, you can change that from orbit to like mission dash briefing up in the URL, and it's going to change the layout.
Clever.
So,
Yeah,
right.
and this is
we have
yeah, this is great. It's like modern web development with your little router, but it's
Yep.
so anybody can just grab the background, get the stream going, which
anyone.
yeah, and what I want to point out real quick too as well is like we talked about Ecamm briefly. StreamYard is another one that folks they gravitate to as like I don't want to figure out all the bells and whistles of getting this to work. So I'm going to use StreamYard and pay for a license there.
Yes.
You can build your own sort of setup, overlays, chats, like all that other stuff that you get for StreamYard. You could build yourself if you wanted to. You could pay for it as well. But yeah.
You could pay for it. And the neat thing is that your stream, unlike the web, which is now very responsive, we're back in a world with set dimensions that we know. It's always going, well, if it's always going to represent your base canvas size in OBS. And in my case, it's like 1920 by 1080, right?
Yeah.
So I know I'm working within that. So I can give instructions to people, create a browser source, load this URL, set it at these coordinates with this width and height. You're done. They can recreate my stream layouts by following a quip doc in a matter of a couple minutes, as opposed to finagling with this, trying to get the same fonts and colors and everything pixel perfect and lined up.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that Gregor's epiphany moment that's happening right now, like this is what I had like probably 9 months ago when I finally figured out, oh, it's just a browser source, because there's a lot of sort of uphill battle and like churn that you have to go through to be able to just one, have a consistent stream, but then two, like have stuff that is engaging and have chat interactions and do overlays. Once you realize it's just a website, now as a developer, which is the audience here, which surprised if anybody's here wondering why you're here. Developers are the audience, so you can build your own thing and you become the next Ninja or Pokemon or whatever. I'm gonna hit another ad.
Honestly.
Yeah. So.
And yeah. And for a long time, I have been, I feel like this is only just starting to scratch the surface. And like, so for my personal stream and my website, and I even have a shop that I'm like moving onto my website, I'm starting to look at like, because I have the ability to build this like backing platform that I can react to in all these different places in real time, this opens up doors for things that like, would be really difficult in any other scenario. And what I mean by that is like, I can be live on stream, and if somebody goes and likes one of my blog posts, I can respond to that on stream. I can have something pop up like, this post just got liked, or here's my top 5 posts, right? Like I can add that command into my chat bot, and I can respond to people with the posts. Or if somebody, or I go live, right? My website updates because I have that information available to me, and so I'm really starting to. I want to blur the lines between platforms, and I think that's the next step for me.
As in platforms, as in like YouTube, Twitch platforms, or
as in like Twitch, my personal website, a Shopify store, like really anywhere that you are, Polywork, like bringing information in there. Anything that has like an API, Notion, right? Like any of these things that are sources of data where I am active on the internet. I want a backing platform that gives me access to all of it, and then also real-time access to updates as it's happening.
Okay.
And I think that unlocks just like you could have on Twitch, somebody gets like 20,000 channel points, and that automatically gives the next person on your shop a discount code for like 20% off their orders.
So
right? Like the lines get very blurry.
I love where you're going at with this, because so this is not GraphQL or anything like that, but this is like of course this is I have the latest one. Anyway, what I'm getting at is there's a tool that I've been using, which is someone that it's been in my community for a bit, which is Tau. So this is Python based and Django based,
cool. But
it is an API unifier. So like if you're looking for inspiration, I think what Finance Singularity is working on right now is going to be really cool and huge, and I'm actually integrating this into my stuff. I'd love to see this in a GraphQL sense as well. And this is the beauty of having things like having this open source is like when you talk about Shopify, that sounds like Streamlabs, what Streamlabs does with their merch component, but their merch component is not great. Like being able to like leverage things like Shopify, which is a better experience across the board, developer side as well as consumer, and it's also a well-known property. That sounds nice. And like Honore's in there saying TakeShape is another tool that also does the sort of mesh as well.
OneGraph does this for GraphQL already to a sense.
Yes, OneGraph
and I think
would be a great glue for that.
Would be great glue. I don't know if OneGraph supports subscriptions though, which is the issue for me. So for the real time stuff,
on select endpoints or select tools have subscriptions, not all of them.
Yeah, exactly. And then, there's still areas where like some of the data is custom and not really in a given platform, but my own platform, like the whole liking system for my blog posts, that's, it's Postgres, it's a smaller GraphQL API. Actually, you could share that as well. It's an open source repository. It's my GitHub. The repository is theworst.dev. And that's actually what's backing my personal streams and this, and has like the bigger platform where I'm starting to integrate other data sources. So it's just another example of me reusing this pattern, but taking it beyond streaming into my own personal website and beyond that. So I'm going to move all of my stream scenes into the same next project as my shop, as my website pages, all with that backing platform. It's all going to be unified in here. So
yeah, I mean, this is great content. And we already had one person who said, I have to come back and watch this again because I'm working and there's too much great content.
I feel that.
But like this is exactly what my dream for BW Live, which I've been slowly realizing, very slowly, which is also powered by OneGraph.
Oh, look at this.
So like all these little notification stuff, reactions are actually powered by a GitHub repository. So that's where all my blog posts come from. That's as far as I've gotten now. Like I haven't done much more work on this. But I love where you're going at with it. I'm definitely going to be starring this and watching this for sure. We need to, actually, I need to get all activity. I just need to know whenever you push something new. Because I will
watch this. I mean, this is my focus for the next half of the year. I'm adding the Shopify part right now on stream. On the Apollo stream, we have another one called Launchpad, and that's where we like build either a feature or an app from start to finish using a different tech stack. And right now we're adding my shop, which I have that exists, where I'm going to embed it. Right, I'm using putting it behind GraphQL, behind my GraphQL platform, and moving it over to my actual website. And so that's step one of this. I'll have enough data sources then where now I'm going to start to branch out and start working with channel points, cross-platform kind of notifications and real-time engagements. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, this is all the stuff that, and then why I invited you on, because I do live streaming. I'm doing this right now, live streaming, and I'm just looking to level up and gain more knowledge, which is like, surprise. This is why I invite open source maintainers to chat with, because I want to hear their experiences. It's not about having the large projects and the heavy hitters. It's about sharing knowledge and making sure that I'm learning as well as the folks in the chat are learning as well.
Yeah. And all of this is enabled through open source. And I am also not the originator of these ideas, right? Like, folks have been using browser sources long before me, but I didn't know about it, and I had not really seen it applied to coding streams as much. And I was like, well, this makes sense. Like, these are the tools I'm comfortable in, and it's going to allow me to build the things that I want to exist faster. So I went ahead with it, but I do it in open source. I try to build anything that I build in the open. One of the things that I've realized is that, doing anything in isolation opens a door for you to miss opportunities to learn new things, better practices than the ones you're implementing now, tools, ideas that you didn't even know existed. And I experienced this the most when I worked at Major League Soccer. We adopted GraphQL very early on, and there was not a lot of information. So I tried to write about it and tweet about it in the open. I started GraphQL NYC meetup and a bunch of other stuff to get that information out in the open and get other people talking about it. Honestly, selfishly, to make sure that what I was doing was, the best way at the time to be able to go about, like working with GraphQL at that scale and in production. And open source just enables us to quickly collaborate, share ideas, and scale things out that like otherwise would just either not exist, be lost, be that, that domain knowledge that's held closely to the chest. And I just think like learning in public, open source, they were fundamental for me learning how to program. And so I try to, it's like one way of paying it back is to, put everything that I do into the open so other folks can enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm right there with you. And I'm a big proponent to sharing information publicly, which is my experience in doing chatbots originally was like seeing Jason Langsdorff talk about his and see how cool it was, like to see people be introduced to the chat the first time on stream and kind of just slide in by just dropping it in fun commands to make his beard grow and stuff. And then I also Coding Garden, another one who does lots of streaming.
Yeah,
great chat integrations, great overlays. But where I struggled was once I started looking at their code, it was just so complicated, and I didn't have this sort of forethought to be like, oh, okay, I get how JavaScript works, I get how React works, I get all this other stuff, but I don't get how this talks to Twitch and OBS and browser sources
all together
and all the stuff. And I think we still lack a full comprehensive guide on how to set this up from start to finish.
I agree. So I've actually been thinking a lot about that. I've actually been thinking about writing that guide myself. I've been holding off though. We talked about Brent a little bit. Brent Schooley, who works at Twilio, does a lot of this stuff, and I believe he's working on something in a very similar vein. And so I was kind of holding off to see if that comes to fruition. But it wouldn't hurt to have more than one anyway.
Yeah.
But well, I think I'm at a point where
more than one experience, more than one angle at coming at this, because there's nuance that you're using. Right. I know that you said you're moving from React to Next, or I guess vanilla React.
Yeah, vanilla React. So currently it's a full SPA, like client side app, which in this case, it doesn't really matter that it is. I don't really need anything like statically rendered or any of that fun jazz, but it's more just about having all of these things in the same technologies and in the same location. So because my website is built in Next, right? And I'm going to, I don't want to maintain multiple projects for things that are really routes that it doesn't matter if you go to the worst.dev slash like, stream layout or some other
Yeah.
Netlify URL, right? So it's really just about that. I prefer the development experience of Next. I think statically rendering the layouts could be, I guess, useful in some cases, but I think it's just more about like cohesiveness, getting the project into a state that's where everything is together, like that singular platform. In the case of the Apollo stream scenes, technically I could just leave them in React, but like I said, I'm going to migrate them to Next for the sake of consistency. It's how a lot of people are building apps these days, and so I think it just makes a better example.
Yeah, amazing. And I 100% agree with the decision. Like being able to, and like it blows my mind that I never thought, oh, I should just add a new route that says live, Friday stream or whatever.
Neither did I. Boom.
And then
neither did I.
At the moment, it renders a 4.4, but I can easily not show the nav bar and replace this 4.4 with the page, because Next it builds this for you, and I can some statically rendered stuff.
Absolutely.
I'm just like mind blown that had not thought of that. I actually have a whole other overlay project. Actually, it's funny because I have this and I've never I use it, but it's extremely basic. It's a Gatsby app that renders just my website name on each side of the screen, and that's it. Because I've never went back and like, oh, I'm going to make this better, but now I know how to make it better. I need to put that into my website, and as I build my website, I can also fix stuff in my overlays.
Yep. And so part of the reason for me going to Next again too is like it simplifies things, because you create a page and that is a route for you, right? So it's like instead of having to bring in reach router and set up a route for each thing that I do, I create the page, and like you said, Next takes care of it for you. In my opinion, it's a little bit easier to demonstrate that to folks, because now they don't have to know that intermediate step, right? I create the page, that is my overlay, I put whatever I want to display here, and I'm off to the races. And I think that it's super powerful. And again, like I wouldn't have thought to put it on my own site either until like after a year of experimenting and building with it. But you're right, now I'll put that on open source and people will be like, oh, look at this is so clever, I can do this as well.
And I was just gonna say the one thing that's nice around this setup too as well, because I don't know if you want to consider this, but having something that's separate from your site makes it approachable as well, because that way you don't have to no one has to dig through the cruft. And sorry, I'm taking the stage because like I'm getting your feedback real time. Like I've got my Baybot, which is my chat interaction, which is nothing but HTML. And I do this intentionally because I wrote a blog post for Baybot, which is my README. It's also in Dev 2. But my actual day-to-day driver is Slaybot. And Slaybot is like Baybot, but it slays. It's powered by Azure. It's using actions. It's
got
overly,
a lot of stuff going on.
overly complicated because this is what I want to use day to day. But if anybody asks me how this works, I put them to Slaybot and I put them to Get Twitch, which is the other half of it.
That's awesome. And, this is a good idea. So I have considered creating that, and that actually goes along the lines with like the guide. Like if I create that guide soon, I will also create a clean example that has like one overlay, one route that gets the whole picture through start to finish, but does not include anything actually specific to Apollo or my own personal platform.
Real quick, I wanted to take a step back and talk about this chat bots. What other interactions do you have for the chat besides memes? Or I guess what are your favorites?
We have a couple right now. So honestly, the meme one is my favorite. We have a couple different templates that you can do. So you could do like hacker, which is the one we'll always do that when we figure something out. Then we have like one of I took a picture of my cat when it was meowing, but it looks like it's screaming. So it's like scream cat. And we can actually see the commands that we have if we go into server chat. And then we scroll down. These are the commands here. So you can kind of see. We have ones that play sounds. You can get the schedule, our COC, link to the Discord. The meme is my favorite. But we have other ones. You could see like the playlist and the current project, like whatever it is that we're working on. And again, we are only at the initial stage of this. These are the ones we have now. Like, what commands do I want to see in the future? Oh my gosh, there's all kind of recent stuff. So I want to see top 5, which just like gives you the top 5 blog posts currently on the Apollo blog or something like that. Events would be another one that gives you our upcoming events instead of just a link to our Google Calendar. It's like a nice little message out there for you. I want to start getting into more interactive events through channel points and commands, like, you know, your common ones like hydrate and posture check. But then other interesting stuff, like I thought about what does it look like to use channel points to allow somebody to come on stream with you? And I would set all that up through browser sources. You can like take phone calls through the browser source if you use Twilio and stuff like that. So I don't know. Like right now, the meme one is my favorite one.
Yeah.
We're not using this like as in depth as we want to, but we don't know. We don't know 100% what commands we'll end up with, but we can add any command that we want. And I feel like they'll happen more organically. I always find that with streaming, it's the things that kind of evolve organically that tend to be fun. Like the sounds that we have listed here, like I think I can, I don't know if folks will get to hear it, but like if you do like zap, right? Like if you have we don't have the right overlay open and stuff, but if you did that, like you'll hear it. We actually did a whole stream where we created an app called Jam Spam, and we connected it to that. It was basically like showing how to do like real-time audio collaboration. So anyone who had it open, we could all like mix sounds together.
Yeah.
And so that kind of just stemmed from that. But I find with like engagement and how I engage with the chat and the community, I don't like to try to like think of things. Sometimes I do, like ideas that I think would be fun and I want to test them. But I find a lot of the stuff happens organically.
Yeah.
I don't even remember how the memes start, but we were like, it'd be so funny if like people could like meme us, like or something happens and you could like create a meme on the fly. I think we were talking about Cloudinary and how that could enable that.
Yeah, I think I think there's a lot to learn from like your approach, and also like I think as you get more and more folks to join your streams and you see the regulars come through, like we do the same thing with moderation. Like you upgrade folks to be mods on the channel. You can upgrade folks to open up PRs for ideas for interactions.
Yep.
Which is again
exactly
for GitHub, that'd be an amazing interaction because we're at GitHub.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I personally think that I'm actually gonna probably start doing streams on the GitHub channel of us starting to build stuff like this, and to be able to build more
a lot of fun.
community around streaming.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it just opens the doors. It creates an environment where when that funny thing happens or that thing that you want to become a command, even when you discover it, even if it's not related to something that actually happened, you're in a position to be able to go and add it and quickly create it without having to like rely on something you pay for or some other service supporting it, you know? And to me, that has always been the most enticing thing about programming is how it enables me to interact with technology in ways that would otherwise cost me or be limited and not quite capable of doing what I want to do. There's nothing more frustrating than being able to get 95% of the way to where you want with something, but it doesn't do that one last thing that you were really, really counting on.
Yeah, that is awesome. And I think what I'm going to do for this video, we normally put these videos on YouTube after the fact, so I'll make sure to grab these links and throw them up on the YouTube description if you happen to be watching this months later. Because I think this is really, really good insight on how y'all have approached it. Probably the most detailed of that I've gotten from any streamer to date, actually. Not even just on stream, just personally. So it's been super helpful for me, and I can't wait to sort of dig in on this stuff.
Yeah, I hope it's super useful to everyone else. It's exciting. I'm always down to talk about it. You can reach out to me on Twitter's at The Worst Dev. That's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me. But I'm happy to answer questions and talk about like how we got there, or if you have any questions about other things we didn't cover. And there's one very last thing that I want to mention, which is live streaming and understanding how to do a lot of this stuff has opened up other doors for me. So right now I just want to call attention to the fact that I'm in a hotel room I had some unplanned travel well, it was planned, but I forgot. I misplanned my calendar. But here I am. I'm actually using a lot of the same tools that I use to get the stream operating to have a better camera than like my default camera in there. So I'm using my phone's camera and I'm running that through something called OBS Ninja, which is a common way to get people and their screens, if you want, into OBS. So it's coming through actually as a browser source. I'm using WebRTC to feed my video feed from my phone into OBS and present that as a camera to the stream. So, this stuff is super powerful. And I learned that by learning about how to do this from other open source stuff. So it's pretty cool.